Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Day 2, Mitchell. We made it. Day 2. What biggest takeaway, overall, overarching thoughts? Then we can dive into any of the details.
I mean, I think the biggest thing as we are here on day 2, first day with fans.
Yeah.
There were 3,000 fans, 2,500, whatever number you want to say. Way more fans than we've seen at a Commanders football team, Redskins training camp since I got to say probably 2012.
I was going to say that's first year in Richmond plus RG3.
Yeah, and they were loud and they were, boisterous and fun. And I think, one of my big complaints about Ron Rivera as a coach has been kind of the way that he handles training camp. I think it's a little bit lighter than we've seen some other coaches. It's not quite as intense or up-tempo. I think Eric Bieniemy's changing that. And hopefully, getting some fans out there, getting a little energy in the building kind of helps this thing move.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, too. And Saturday is expected to be the big day. Like, that's the thing. This was jam-packed 2,500 to 3,000 people on what's today? Thursday?
Thursday. Yeah.
Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning. People, what are you doing? Don't you have to go to work? Like, it is kind of crazy to think that. I know it's the first day of the Harris era, but like from a logistical standpoint, it is very impressive, and I think does give credence to the sleeping giant theory, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hard up on that since they signed the exclusive agreement in whatever that was, June, that week 1 at FedEx Field is going to be the best day of Washington football since arguably maybe RG3's run against the Vikings, or even going back as far as the Super Bowl. I mean, that place is going to be sold out and fans are going to be excited, and I think this is just a small taste of that.
On the field today, to me, the offense 7-on-7 seemed a lot crisper. I don't know. Let me back up for a second. Yesterday, I feel like everyone said the offense was like fine and Hal had a good day. I walked away going like, I wasn't great. Like, it's day 1. It's fine. What did you think yesterday, and then how do you compare that to today?
So I think when you watch training camp practices, certainly for fans, I think one thing you got to pay attention to, or at least think about, is you got a bunch of young players who are trying to make the roster. The first team offense runs their set of 7 to 10 plays. Second team offense comes in, they run the same set of plays. Third string comes in and does the same thing. So as you get deeper into some of these sessions, these defensive players have seen these plays over and over and over again. And I think it's important to kind of keep in mind that guys get a little jump happy. They don't necessarily play their rules exactly as they would during a game, or if they didn't know what plays were coming. So I think yesterday there were a couple interceptions and pass breakups that maybe were a little bit more on the guys knew what was coming stage, as opposed to quarterbacks making bad throws. I thought yesterday Sam Howell had some more impressive throws. He had a couple really nice balls into tight pockets. He had a good ball to Antonio Gibson on a wheel route down the sideline that was just perfectly placed. AG was the only one that could get it. Today it was a little bit ball placement was a little bit worse, but not bad by any means. I thought today was I thought yesterday was a good building block. Today was a good building block. I wouldn't take anything away from either saying it's too much.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the thing that was interesting today was 7-on-7 to me felt very crisp. You add the lines, and it's like, oh, right, that Sweat fella, pretty good. That Young fella, pretty good. John Allen is getting some penetration in the backfield, and obviously you combine that with the questions we all have on the offensive line. You can't take anything away from line play in any major way until they get pads on, and you have multiple days worth of data. But I did find that contrast interesting, that when it's not just sit back there and wait in 7-on-7, that there was a noticeable difference, at least to me.
Yeah, I mean, every year in training camp since they started this bulking up the D-line thing, this has been a storyline, right? The D-line dominates. Ron has to come over and tell the guys to let the offense run their plays and get through it. What I thought was interesting today is that because they're just in, shorts and T-shirts, the D linemen were mostly using speed moves to get around the O-line. There wasn't any, not a lot of bull rushes, not a lot of physical rushing, and they were pretty successful. I mean, Chase had a great move against Leno, where he kind of started up the outside and cut back in underneath and would have gotten a completely clean shot on Sam Howell. And we know there are going to be issues with the offensive line. That's the biggest concern I have going into the season, and days like today don't help quell that at all.
It's Mitch Tischler, of course, here on the Hoffman Show, Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@the Team 980, recording live after day 2 of Commanders training camp. Chase, we all have our eyes on him, and just from a pure, again, logistical standpoint, we can watch him fairly easily because he lines up on the right side of the defensive line. We are on the right sideline as the media. But it seems like Montez has made yet another jump on the other side. I know it is a little bit of a styles make fights thing with Wiley, and Montez is a bad matchup for Wiley, and we'll see that play out. And that doesn't mean I'm super concerned about Wiley, nor does it mean, if that's the case, that we should put too much stock into what Montez is doing. But from what we've been able to see with all those caveats in place, like between spring and summer, does it feel like Montez is ready for yet another step on top of the step he made last year?
It does. I mean, I think both Montez and Chase being in contract years is going to be a storyline throughout the year, and I think it's going to motivate both of those guys. I think Montez has done a good job year after year, kind of improving, expanding his pass rush arsenal, all those different things. The biggest thing I think we have to see from him is finishing, especially on the pass rushes. Last year he did a good job of getting within the range of the quarterback, but I don't think he didn't have a ton of QB hits or sacks, obviously. And I think that's something that both guys you got to see more from. I think we know what John and Duran are up the middle, and we know that they're going to be difference makers in the run and the pass game. But along the outside, you got to get home. You got to get home with 4 rushers, especially with the amount that they've spent on this D-line, and hopefully Montez is able to take that next step and do that.
So currently the top of my list of have a pin in it, watching it, don't want to say too much yet, is Jamin Davis. Playing a lot with the 2s, gets in with the 1s today, also has a touchdown scored on him on a rail route from really nice throw, Jacoby Brissett to Jarrett Patterson. But do you just attribute that to a getting up to speed kind of thing, or what's going on with Jamin in terms of the rotation as he works his way back from injury? And again, let's acknowledge this dude played really well at the end of last year. But what do you make of his first couple of days and really how they're using him so far?
I think similar to Montez, going back a couple of years for him, you're seeing him get better each year, and he has to continue doing that. Cody Barton's getting a lot of those first-team reps, and I think Cody Barton will help a lot in the run game, but he's having some trouble lining up. And granted, Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson are both kind of shiftier backs, but he's not doing a great job in coverage there, and that's obviously the big question. The linebacker is in coverage, and that's where I think Jamin can separate himself from the rest of the guys, because he does have that speed. He's working back from that procedure on his knee. It was a cleanup procedure, all the different things that they want to say.
Yeah. They can say that. You still cut the knee open.
Exactly. They tried to pass it off as it not being that big of a deal. Oh, he wasn't at OTA's minicamp. I think he's going to take a little bit of time to ramp up and be 100%. But if he's able to continue the trajectory that he showed, through last season or through the end of his rookie year, and then as we got into a second year, I think that he could be a big surprise for the middle of this defense.
Mitch Tischler, Beltway Football Podcast, with us here for a few more minutes on the Hoffman Show. All right, obviously that brings us to the running backs, the guys on the offensive side of it. Have you been surprised at all, pleasantly surprised, by what Brian Robinson has shown so far? Obviously they haven't run the ball a ton, but I think that's why it's impressive. He seems to stand out in the pass game. He
does. I think you got to look at the Bieniemy offense and how much they get the ball to running backs in different ways, not just handing them off pitches, short passes, screen plays, all that different stuff. And I love kind of the preciseness of this Eric Bieniemy offense. And that's something I think Brian Robinson is getting used to and learning and improving on. We saw in minicamp, Bieniemy really chew his butt out for not being, precise enough. And we're seeing the growth from him already just through 2 days. And once they put the pads on and they're able to, actually use the run to set up the pass, I think it's going to be that much more impressive. So the fact that some of these guys are standing out when the defense knows that essentially there's going to be no run plays really tells you something.
Dyami Brown has made a couple of big plays. We've been waiting for it since he was drafted, basically. Do you think that is something that can carry over?
Yeah, I think, obviously the connection with Sam Howell is obvious. We know going back to North Carolina, them playing together, Dyami Brown went down for Sam Howell's pro day, when he was coming out. So those two are clearly very tight. And Dyami has a big opportunity here because there's enough talent in the receiver room ahead of him that folks are going to have to concentrate on Terry and Jahan and, Curtis as well a little bit more. He's going to get some one-on-one opportunities to go down the field, and we know that his speed is elite. And if he's able to make some of the contested catches like we saw today from a deep ball from Jacoby Brissett, that's going to be a difference maker in this offense, because we know Sam Howell's going to want to push that ball downfield.
So full circle, back off the field. But one thing that I'm kind of monitoring is obviously the players' reaction to Josh Harris. And one of the things that I found interesting is especially some of the younger players saying like, we're so happy he's here. The energy's great. We love that. But like we're players, like I don't know how much ownership stuff actually trickles down to us. To me, that is youth not understanding really how an organization works, and that's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. But as someone who's been around this organization for so long, like what are the areas that you think all of a sudden, in whether it's this year, next year, 5 years from now, players are going to look up and go like, "Wow, Josh and his ownership group made a big difference here."
Yeah, well, I think for the young players, especially the real young guys. The difference they see is on social media. Like they post a picture of them with their buddy, and all 6 months ago, all of the comments are F day and this, that, and the other thing. Now all of a sudden you're getting into folks are just excited for football to be here. So I think as far as like the feel goes, that's where they're gonna really notice the difference. But we talk about the stands being an upgrade. That's not something that came in overnight. It wasn't Josh Harris bought the team on Friday and Saturday they put it in the stands. It was in the plans, but you see the willingness to spend a little bit of money. And I think with the facilities inside this building that have been very lightly upgraded in the past probably almost 2 decades or so, I think when you start seeing some of those upgrades come in, both on the training table and in the weight room and in the cold tubs, medical areas as well, I think that's really where you're going to see the difference. And quite frankly, that's the biggest issue I think with some of the shortcomings of the previous ownership was their unwillingness to spend money. That's why FedEx Field ended up kind of dilapidating itself into the position that it is. You look here and the weight room is smaller than some high school weight rooms, especially as you get to big programs. So when these guys are coming from Alabama and Texas and Florida and all these other big schools, and they walk in and they're like, wait, you have 3 squat racks? Are you serious? Like, what are we supposed to do here? So I think that's going to be kind of the big difference, is stuff that fans might not notice, but I think the players will really notice once they kind of get their hands on some stuff and realize where the upgrades need to come.
I totally agree. They don't know what they don't know. Or it's just like, oh, this is the way the NFL is, I guess. It's not as nice as the Alabama weight room. Then again, what is? Mitchell Tischler with us here on the Hoffman Show, Beltway Football Podcast. What are you guys doing for training camp? What's the plan?
We have our daily pods going. So every day we'll have an update. I think our most fun thing is we do our one thing of the day. We pick out kind of the biggest thing that stood out to us, and it's a fun listen. So come join us.
There you go. Do that. Great pod. Always a good listen. Appreciate your time. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.